Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive, ready to really dig into some of the more subtle but potentially really significant details about Palantir. We're going beyond just like the recent stock surge and all the headlines to really uncover those strategic moves they're making. And we'll be looking at this Motley Fool article called Four Things Palantir Investors May Have Missed This Week as our main guide.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. It seems like Palantir is playing a game of 4D chess while everyone else is focused on checkers. This article really sheds some light on some of their under-the-radar moves that reveal a lot about their long-term strategy.
Okay, so let's start with something that at first seemed pretty straightforward. Palantir joining the NASDAQ 100 on December 23rd. They switched from the NYSE to NASDAQ just last month, so this move was kind of expected. But I feel like there's more to it than meets the eye.
You're right there. It's not just a formality. Institutional investors, the big players, are practically lining up to get in on Palantir. And this NASDAQ listing just makes it even easier for them to invest, which could potentially push the stock even higher. But I think more importantly, it shows that Wall Street is really starting to take them seriously. They're recognizing Palantir's potential to really dominate the AI landscape.
So it's a credibility move as much as a financial one.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears for a second and talk about their partnership with Red Cat Holdings and their Black Widow drone.
Oh yeah, the one that's supposed to be used by the Department of Defense. I think they even said it's like fitting an AI brain into a backpack.
That's the one. And just think about it. Palantir's AI is going to be powering what Red Cat's CEO claims to be among the most capable drones ever fielded by the Department of Defense. The Black Widow is going to be equipped with Palantir's visual navigation software and warp speed manufacturing system. This goes way beyond simple surveillance now. We're talking about real-time data analysis on the battlefield.
So potentially a huge advantage for whoever's using it.
Yeah, potentially. It really makes you think about how warfare is going to be conducted in the future. Are we talking about autonomous drones making life or death decisions in the heat of battle?
That is a bit unnerving, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it sounds like this technology is really pushing those boundaries.
Yeah.
And speaking of pushing boundaries, what about this Army Vantage contract? That seems like a pretty big deal.
Oh, it is massive. So the initial focus was on personnel and combat readiness, which was already a significant undertaking. But now the Army is expanding Palantir's Vantage platform to the entire Department of the Army, integrating it into what they call the Army Data Platform, or ADP.
The ADP.
Yeah, so that means the ADP will use Palantir's data analysis capabilities for everything: logistics, risk management, recruiting, you name it. And the value of this contract reflects that $400 million with the potential to go up to $618 million over the next 4 years.
Wow, so they're basically becoming like the central nervous system of the Army.
Essentially, yes. It's a huge testament to how effective Palantir is at processing massive amounts of data and turning it into actionable insights. The Army is basically betting big on Palantir to help them make better decisions faster.
Makes you wonder if this is kind of the future of like all large organizations relying on AI to sift through mountains of data and make sense of it all.
It's definitely a trend we're seeing, and Palantir is definitely positioning themselves to be a leader in that space. But here's where things get really interesting. Their partnership with Pray.com, remember them, the faith-based platform.
Wait, Palantir's helping them translate prayers? That's not what I was expecting at all. How does that even work?
It's actually a great example of how Palantir's AI can be used for all sorts of different problems, not just like government or military stuff. Pray.com needed a way to translate their content into different languages, but they had to do it quickly and accurately without spending a fortune. Their old methods were slow, expensive, and the quality wasn't always great.
So what did Palantir bring to the table?
Well, they brought in their secret weapon, their ontology software development kit. This basically let Pray.com automate a big chunk of the translation process while still keeping what the article called the quality of native language speakers. And they were able to do all this way cheaper and faster than before.
Wow, so translations that used to take days or weeks can now be done in minutes.
Exactly.
Okay, that's impressive. I'm starting to see how versatile their technology really is. But what does this all mean for Palantir as a business?
Well, I think it's about diversifying their portfolio. Government and defense contracts are definitely a big chunk of their revenue. But branching out into other sectors like faith-based platforms shows that they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're showing they're adaptable and they're willing to explore new markets, which could be huge for them down the line.
Especially when you think about their valuation right now. The article mentioned that Palantir's stock is trading at a pretty high price based on traditional metrics like, the price-to-earnings ratio. But when you factor in their future growth potential, their forward PEG ratio, actually suggests that they might be undervalued.
Yeah, you're right. That PEG ratio is kind of a wild card here. It suggests that their future earnings could be way higher than what those traditional metrics are showing. But that's the thing with Palantir. They're disrupting so many different industries and even creating entirely new markets that it's tough to predict their growth with those old school models.
So it's a bit of a gamble for investors then.
I mean, there's always some risk, especially with companies that are really pushing the envelope like this. But that's where our deep dive comes in. We're looking at these seemingly small developments like the NASDAQ, listing the Red Cat partnership, the Army Vantage expansion, even the Pray.com collaboration. All these details can help us get a better understanding of Palantir's overall strategy, what their strengths are, and where they might be headed. And hopefully that'll help you, the listener, make smarter decisions.
Absolutely. So what's the one big question we should all be asking ourselves about Palantir?
Is Palantir a risky bet or a company that's on the verge of something huge? Do you see them as a future tech giant or a company that's just riding a wave of hype? Only time will tell. But this deep dive has hopefully given you the tools to start answering those questions for yourself.
It's wild, right? Like Palantir is almost like this tech chameleon, blending into all these different sectors, adapting its AI to solve all these different kinds of problems.
Yeah, and I think that adaptability is maybe one of their biggest strengths. That lets them kind of, spread out their revenue streams, not rely too much on any one particular market, and potentially, tap into these totally new customer bases.
It reminds me of something the article pointed out about their valuation. So, the article mentioned Palantir stock is trading at a pretty high price if you look at just the traditional metrics, like the, price to earnings ratio.
Right.
But when you consider their potential for growth, you look at that forward PEG ratio, it suggests that they might actually be undervalued.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a real head scratcher for investors, especially with a company like Palantir that's kind of, rewriting the rules.
Yeah.
Traditional valuation models, they often they miss the mark when you're dealing with a company that's disrupting industries and creating whole new markets.
So is Palantir like a risky gamble or some kind of hidden gem? I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like it could really go either way.
Well, that's kind of the exciting part about investing, right? There's always that element of the unknown. But what we've tried to do in this deep dive is to give you the information you need to make a more informed decision. We've gone through all these different aspects of Palantir, from the NASDAQ listing to their partnerships with companies like Red Cat, the expansion of that Army Vantage contract, even that kind of surprising collaboration with Pray.com.
Yeah, we've really tried to go deeper than just the stock ticker and the headlines.
Right.
To try to understand those underlying trends that are shaping where Palantir is headed.
Exactly. And so now the question is, what do you see when you look at Palantir? Do you see a company that's ready to take off? A company that's moving through this complex and, this rapidly changing world with real agility?
Or do you see a company that's maybe a little overvalued, overhyped,
Yeah.
and possibly, vulnerable to changes in the market or even government policy?
There's not really a right or wrong answer here, but there are definitely more informed perspectives. And that's what we're all about here on the Deep Dive, giving you a deeper understanding, a richer context, a more nuanced perspective on these companies and technologies that are shaping our world.
Exactly. We've given you the information, the insights, the analysis.
Now it's up to you to make the call.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this deep dive has given you a new way to kind of look at what Palantir's doing. So as you follow their journey, keep this in mind. Look past the surface, think about the implications. Ask yourself, is Palantir actually shaping the future, or are they just riding the wave?
That's a great question to leave everyone with. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Palantir. We'll see you next time for another insightful exploration. Until then, keep on diving.